Hi, this is John Hilbrands with HIlbrands Carpet Care. Today I'm going to take you a little slower through a restretch. I think maybe some people like to see a little bit more how it's done. This one is a home that a realtor recommended me, and the owner, is selling it essentially. So it needs to be stretched and cleaned before it's sold. And so this is the loft, and you saw that first wrinkle. And as I lower myself, because I didn't want you to just think these are dirt lines, you can see them hugely bubble up. So just lots of wrinkles. Now I can't stretch it towards the stairs, and that opening would affect everything. So I have to stretch everything towards the other way. And you do 90 degrees to the wrinkle, so we're all pulling it towards this wall that I'm walking towards. And essentially this seam will have to be opened and then basically cut and reseamed. So after you create an overlap, cut the overlap off and reseam it. Now because I'm going to this edge, I didn't want you to think I could have taken it into this doorway against this wall, because that would affect the other doorways. And so we're going to do this right at the seam. So that's part of me figuring it out, but essentially you want to cut it right on that line. So because the edges will often lift, because of the way seaming irons work, the edges don't seem to get stuck too well. I can peel them just a little bit so I can get the idea of where the line is. It'll make it easier for me to make a straight line and cut through the rest of the seaming tape. Then I'll flip it up and I'll heat the backing and remove the rest of the tape. So we'll get rid of that old seaming tape. We'll also have to nail it so that when we power stretch it, it'll hold while I'm seaming. And then of course you remove the nails because they're just temporary while you're doing the seam to keep it tight. All right, so we'll be removing about 1 inch, and that's one of the reasons why we can't adjust these doorways. It's too much. And when you do cut 1 inch off, you will go you do want to be on the line, but if you're a little bit off, you'll have a remnant, and that remnant cannot stay there. So it has to be removed before you seam. So basically, I'll be power stretching it towards this wall, all the way down, and when I get to this area, I'll be power stretching it and nailing it. All right? So now let's look at these other rooms here. You can see that these are rooms that they didn't have on my list. And it's really hard for me to imagine why I'm getting there, nobody's there. I'm going to be talking to her in a minute. But this room looks terrible, especially around where a desk was. So as I walked around, I was thinking about what I should do. And I elected to just decide to lower the price a little bit, because this master actually looks pretty easy. There's just one end wall there that I have to stretch to. So what I decided to do is do those 2 other rooms for the price of 1. And she said, oh, good, okay. So she was all good with that. My stretch price for the 3 rooms, the loft, and that hall seam, and a closet was going to be like $500. All right, so here we are at the seam, and you can see how I'm cutting this. Basically, it's nailed down. I have my straight edge there, and what I'll do is hold that little lip so it'll keep it out of my way, and then I'll kind of flip it back and forth with the blade to try and get under those fibers without cutting face fibers. So because they're really flattened down, I don't want to just cut, because you'll create a V and it'll make your seams very noticeable. So here I am seaming it, and you can see how nice it's coming out. Invisible, thank you. I pinch it and I just move the seam iron as I go forward, rolling it on the way. Getting to the end of the seam, looking really nice. I wanted to show you how well the fibers are laying over that seam line. Notice that the nails are there holding it in place so that it's not going to pull away. Now as I get to this edge, I actually had noticed that it had sunk, it had relaxed a little bit, so it wasn't, the nails didn't hold it quite enough. So that's why the power stretcher is there. I gave it a little bit more push, and then of course it creates an overlap on one area, but the other area is perfect, so then you have to do a little more scissorsing, but end result beautiful seam. All right, so that's all done. And the seam is usually the hardest part, so that's where I start. And then I put this blower. Now, you want to cool the seam so that you can work somewhere else. The seam, for instance, the power stretcher can't be moved right now. So that will create a fan, and it's also a weight. So it's a fan weight, so it's cooling the carpet. And on a 3-foot seam like this one, I wait until I'm done. If I was doing a longer seam, I'd have it working behind me. Also the nails, it tends to be sitting on top of the nails, so it doesn't work as well. So it's a little slow right here. I have to make sure everything's cool before I move on. Now here we are walking into these back rooms. And this is the really bad room. There was a desk here, and it's against the wall, and oh my gosh, it's so worn out right there. Everybody would think this would be a lost cause, but I'm going to do some little trickery there and make that go away. I'm going to start by kicking it to that close wall before I power stretch it to the other. The power stretcher is that thing with the pole with the big head, and it has a lever and it pulls it really tight. Then what I'll be doing is, after I get it nice and flat, I'm going to trim these high fibers with the scissors. They're a napping shear, and they're actually for that purpose, to cut a little nap. That's why they have that duck bill on them. So do a little trim there, roll it with the seam roller, and then I'm also going to kind of use the head of the kicker because it's kind of has nails, and it'll actually fluff that worn out area. So this is what it looks like after I kicked it. So we're still got to power stretch it the other direction. And so I'm going to trim that, and then I'm going to power stretch it the other way. Okay, so now I've power stretched it the other way. And when I kicked it, I kind of got it almost to where it was perfect. And so the only area where you can see that flip up is where that heavy amount of worn out wrinkling was. So now I'll trim that other side and get that. And then I'll start working on making that wear kind of where it's all bumpy because it's high. Trim that down and kind of get the other fibers flipped up. Okay, so I've trimmed the high parts, and now I'm kind of fluffing that worn out area up. A little bit better than a vacuum because the head of a kicker has those nails in it, and it'll really pile lift it really nice. So I'll get it as high as it can get, do a little more trimming, and get that as invisible as we can get it. I think the end result, though, will make it so that this house will sell a lot better. Okay, so we're setting up for the cleaning now. And here is the room that was one of her primary concerns, with the 5 or 6 wrinkles. And then here is the master, which was her second concern. And it was a pretty easy room, and that's why we lowered the price to get her to do those other 2. So the realtor would be happy with me, because he referred me probably because he wanted to be able to sell the house well. And, people are going to not have a good opinion of your house if you leave things. That seam came out perfectly. You can't even see it. This room, which was fairly easy. And then this was the really hard room with that crazy pacing they must have been doing by that desk. But it looks really good. You can't even see where it was anymore. I did that extra fluffing, that extra trimming, and I really got that fold out of the carpet. So that is our setup for the pre-spray. Generally, we spray the emulsifier and then steam pure hot water. And that's basically called a zero residue method. But everything came out well. And I think the house will sell much better. If you can imagine, replacement would have been probably about 10 grand. And the cleaning and the stretch was $750. So a good deal. Okay, so this was a stretch of 3 rooms, loft, and hall. And I am John with HIlbrands Carpet Care. I hope you liked my video. Give me a thumbs up and a subscribe if you can. Thanks, have a good day.